Music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Machine Pun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello, and welcome to the Punch Show, where you can see we have a full panel. This is the first time I've ever had a full panel like this. Thanks for joining, all of you. Thanks for joining all who are watching. Today, I think is going to be really interesting. As you know, if you follow the show, I have been trying to I've been made it a big part of my my goal is to figure out how to unite the left. I feel like infighting hurts us, and for whatever reason, MAGA has become this rallying cry, and they've united around a weirdo despot. But the right is united, and I feel like we need to figure out how to unite on the left. I don't think that means we need to always agree on everything, or that we need like some kind of Donald Trump, whatever he says goes kind of thing. And the example I like to use is what happened in South Korea, where there were different groups that had different goals, but they were able to unite and overthrow the dictator and worry about, the things where they maybe, like they have different priorities, worry about that crap later. Right now, just worry about getting the despot gone. And the best example I've heard used is Al Franken talking about you don't argue about the color of the drapes while the house is burning down. So with that, we're just going to go around, and some of you I know, some of you I don't know. I want to be awkward here for helping assemble this panel. But we're just going to start with an icebreaker. Has nothing to do with politics. I'm super excited that Poker Face started up again last night or yesterday. If you don't know what Poker Face is, it's on Peacock. It is the best crime show on TV for like since Columbo. It's an amazing show, and it's really it's like a tribute to Columbo in a lot of ways. They even use the same font, and she'll do it's just one more thing type thing. Anyway, if you haven't watched it, watch it. But we'll start with Noah. And what's your current favorite TV show?
I don't watch a lot of television, but I enjoyed Severance. It was the last thing I watched that I really liked.
I need to rewatch the first season because I watched the first episode of the second season, and that show is just so weird that I feel like I need to watch the first season and just marathon straight through. Okay, Will, your turn.
I put down Severance, but I'm going to do something different. I'll go with Silo, which is like, I like how they play on this sort of like forced forgetfulness and fascism tensions there. I think it's really good. So.
Okay, Koza?
I don't watch TV that much either, but I was thinking about this one show on Netflix called I forgot what it's called, but it's about the creators wanted to make it a version of what Paris was like during when the Nazis invaded and when they repelled them, and what it was like in the city. And so they just kind of recreated that in Los Angeles, and then they just made a big old wall walling everyone into the city limits. It's interesting, but I can't remember. Oh, it's called Colony. It's called Colony, but there's other shows with that name too. But that's what it's called anyway.
Okay, Brian.
Hey, well, when I'm not binging on news, I'm watching reruns of Password. I love that show. But I love crime and spy thrillers as well.
Then you got to give Poker Face, especially like if you like old style. If you haven't seen it, it's on Peacock. It's amazing. Okay, Adam.
Hey, everybody. Well, aside from being a huge sports fan, Mets and Knicks, very New York-based guy, we're doing very well so far. So good, very happy thus far. For some reason, my wife and I have been tending to watch a lot of dystopian futuristic society where zombies are attacking, and there seem to be a whole lot of them, the whole host of Walking Dead shows, Last of Us, and it just somehow seems appropriate for today's political atmosphere. So that's where we're at. That and the Pit.
The Pit. I just got to throw out this boast. My wife's cousin is Noah Wiley. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So not really a boast, kind of cool.
If you've not seen the show, it's excellent, and the doctors and medical folks that I know say that it is extremely realistic versus other TV shows. So there's that.
There's a guy.
I can confirm that too.
There's a guy named Dr. Mike that has a YouTube show where he's like an actual doctor, and he said it's almost too realistic. It's like it gets hard to watch because it's too realistic. But
very, very light and inspiring as well. Which no, it is not. It is definitely not, folks.
The with the mass shooting.
Haven't gotten there yet, but thanks for that spoiler alert, Kelly.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. The last 3 or 4 episodes are 3 of the 4 best episodes of TV I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow. So I'm a big Band of Brothers guy, and I think that's the best thing that I've ever seen. So that's pretty high marks. I'll be looking forward to it. We're almost there. We're, I think, at episode 7 or 8.
So, Ilana.
Yes, Elon 11. So I'm currently watching a show that is about slowly building a mass popular uprising against a fascist government that has extractive colonialism and enforces like all kinds of capitalist extractive economy. And that show happens to be a Star Wars TV show called Andor. I am working with a civil rights organization called Get Free on a fan organizing campaign called Project Fulcrum, where we are helping fans of Andor and Star Wars find meaningful ways to plug into actual movements fighting against white supremacy and anti-fascism in real life. Because so many people from a lot of different generations kind of got their first exposure to anti-fascist organizing watching Star Wars. And while that story is told in such a mythic scale that it's not particularly useful in some ways in the original trilogy, the expanded world of Star Wars includes so many stories, especially this one, that are drawing on real world history and everything from not just the Holocaust, but like looking at COINTELPRO, Kissinger, the Nixon administration, the French resistance, and globally as well. Like I'm learning about popular uprisings in Mexico in just this week's version of the newsletter that we put out, things I didn't know before, even though I'm a very political history-oriented person. So if folks want to check that out, we are, if you go if you guys want to go to check out Project Fulcrum, we are at getfreetogether.org/project-fulcrum. And that's where we're hanging out. We've got a Discord and we've got a newsletter, and my own podcast, Graphic Policy Radio, has already done an episode about this season. We'll be doing one next week about the rest of the season too. So
awesome.
I'm going to help support that for sure. I don't know if I already agreed to that or if I already told you that or anything, but I definitely want to. That, like, that just sounds like a really, I mean, not just a fun idea, but a really smart idea too.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, where people spend their time is talking about the things they love, and
right.
people, that's different television shows and fandoms, and, organizers, we wanna be where the people are, and where the people are
Yep.
is where the things they love, so here we are.
I'm thinking of my kids. It's perfect.
It's a great idea. My daughter insisted we go see the last showing of the re-airing of Revenge of the Sith, which just ended
Ah.
last Wednesday, and talk about parallels to today. It was quite it's probably the best Star Wars episode, but I think it's a great idea as well.
If I remember correctly, George Lucas said that the U.S. government during Vietnam was the inspiration for the Empire.
Yep, yep. It's the metaphors are very much baked in, and they've just expanded and made them more complex over time. So
Very cool.
Okay, is it how do I say this? Porco?
Porco Rossellini.
Do you like bacon?
Yeah, I do enjoy bacon. Quite a lot.
That doesn't make you a cannibal or anything, does it?
I don't know, man. That's a good question. Being a flying pig man, that's a tough one.
Sorry, gotta live up to the name every now and then. It's
Every now and then. Actually, my business cards even have a little hand-drawn porco on them.
oh my goodness. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I leaned into it.
Yeah.
But I do Legos and video games are my poison. I have been rewatching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the anime on Netflix, though, which has been a treat.
That sounds cool.
That's my kid and her husband too. Video games and Legos.
So I'm not much of a video game person, but have you watched The Last of Us at all, or?
Yeah, I've watched the first season. I'm setting out the second season because Druckmann, one of the primary creators, is a Zionist. So I'm kind of sitting out on the second season on a morality note. But that first season is a great adaptation of the video game. I mean, I've played the video game.
So something happens in the second season that I was not expecting, but or in the TV series that I was not expecting, and everybody that watched the video that played the video game was like, "How could you not know this is going to happen?" But anyway,
yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about, Kelly, and my wife and I were stunned. We're not gamers either. Our son is, but we were talking about that. You just pop up in conversation 3 days later. I can't believe such and such.
okay, I was like, "What in the what's this anyway?" All right, so my old buddy Awkward here, who is actually not very awkward, actually.
Yeah, I've told that story before. I used to be, and the truth is how I feel inside. This is masking. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. I'm a ball of anxiety and misery inside, so don't worry. The show 3% is on Netflix, and it's also one of these dystopian situations. I highly recommend it. But since I don't know, I think that it's hard for me to tell if that show actually, yeah, I'm not sure if that show's coming back. So and I don't know how many people have seen it. So I'll also throw out, based on what I just said about being crazy, the show You. I relate to the main character, but not because of the murdering. And I knew
That's
this
good
would
to know. Good.
Well, this is like link. What's it called? Like to get people to link and then the story's completely different, because that's a crazy statement that everyone's going to perk up about. But I really did find myself identifying with the underlying issue, which is that he cares so much that he can't function. Like his very passion and and love are the very things that make women attracted to him, and then the same things that make him kill them. And needless to say, I have come nowhere near killing anybody. I'm married with kids, and my crimes were beating up Nazis and smoking pot. But I have gotten into so much trouble, both professionally with people not understanding why I'm so excited to work on their project, to altercations on the street for people not understanding why I'm so friendly or something. Like, Joe is a murderer, there's no question, but mental illness is very misunderstood, as is trauma. And he is both of those things. He is the result of trauma. He was made this way, and that's kind of how the show ends. I won't give away the ending, but what he's basically asking is like, is it my fault or is it society's? Anyway, you do need to blame him. But as an abolitionist, I have a different solution. Anyway, that's the end of that.
Sweet, bro. Sweet. And so last, Rebecca Jones, we have been co-followers since the Twitter days.
Oh, yeah.
I really love your account. What's your favorite show?
So this might be cliche, and I'm sure probably a lot of people expect me to say this, but The Handmaid's Tale.
It's amazing.
I mean, I don't know how deeply people have been watching it. I keep up with it. But after like the last week episode, I found myself feeling something that I've probably never felt before. And I'm actually kind of sorry for Serena Joy, which I never thought was possible. I'm kind of like, I don't know if anybody knows what they're doing, but what they're doing is really going to hurt her. And I'm kind of like, God, but I think this time she actually has changed. And so and I never thought I would say that. I literally was like live tweeting as I was watching the first episode of this new season, like, shut up, Serena. Shut your fucking mouth, Serena. Stop talking, Serena. But yeah,
that goes exactly with what I was saying. I mean, anyone, as an abolitionist, that is part of what my belief system is, that anyone is capable of transformation. And
well, I mean, we had gotten like this close to Serena Joy actually changing at several points, and then she just reverted right back. So
yeah, which she could do again, of course.
Which she could do again, but I don't know. I actually feel like she's different, and that she realizes, talking to the other women in Gilead, that what she effectively did was make women stupid and not able to have independent thought. And I don't think there's anything that Serena Joy loathes in the world more than women being stupid.
Right now, I am flashing back to last week when I heard a clip of Karl Rove where I agreed with him.
Oh well,
yeah.
Strange thing.
I mean, she was traumatized herself, and she is at the level of power, though, where that question becomes really difficult. Like the anti-fascism versus.
She didn't even change after they cut her freaking fingers off. She became the same person. It's like, I'm sorry, you cut my fingers off, I'm gonna hate you.
Which is what makes
her fingers
you
off
question.
For reading from the Bible. She read from the Bible. I don't know if you guys watched this, in front of men. And they cut fingers off of her hand. So it's because women aren't allowed to read. But
it's a terrifying show.
In defense of a poor little girl who was, I think, Sydney Sweeney back in the day, who played another character who they were going to put to death for falling in love at like 15 or 16. And so you were like, oh God, she's finally realized. No, she went right back to it like 3 more times after that. But
I had to actually,
the importance of security.
I'm gonna get back into watching that show, but right now it's just I stopped watching like halfway through season 3 because it was just too realistic. it was just hard to watch. So anyway, I know the last season is coming out, so I think I'll wait until it's done and then try and get back into it. All right, let's go to the real questions now. And first, my goal here is really to like have different perspectives. So can we just go around the room and real quick kind of identify where you align politically? I will say I am a what I like to call a liberal institutionalist. I'm somewhat liberal. I believe in things like universal health care and the power of the government to balance things out instead of I feel like that the people their representative is the government, capitalism, the rich people's representative is capitalism. The way to force some of that money to come back down to the people is through government. And so I feel like the institution of government should be for the people. But I feel like the best way to do that is through the government. So that's why I'm a liberal institutionalist. So we'll just go around real quick, kind of give your political view.
I guess I'm a lefty and a Democrat. I don't know. Yeah.
Nice. My politics are roughly the Black Panther Party, I think. So, redistributionist, self-defense. That's where community is. So.
Is it my turn? I can't tell. I don't know. I would say mine is like a Democrat or progressive and like a little bit more radical on other things. Oh, I was just going to add that the Bible actually says, the Old Testament actually says to cut your wife's hand off if she helps you in a fight. And I wonder if that's where they got the idea for the Handmaid's Tale to cut the fingers off.
Yeah, they were going to cut her whole hand off, but her husband was a commander and convinced them only to take a couple fingers.
Yeah. Wow. I think they're referencing slavery too, because enslaved people would be mutilated if they read in the U.S.
And the women are enslaved in the society, absolutely. So
they are. Brian?
That's a tough question. I guess I'm a pragmatist, anti-Puritopian who thinks we can't make progress if we keep losing.
I love your background, by the way. I was just noticing that.
That's the one I have.
Okay, Adam?
Oh, sure. Way to make me feel inadequate. Thanks very much.
Well, you could have a light bulb moment.
Apparently, I can't. I'm in kind of a weird space right now. I just had arthroscopic surgery a couple of days ago, so I'm a little bit limited in physically where I can be. So, sorry for the background if it's distracting at all. But I'd like to think that my personality may be a little bit more distracting. As you might guess from my socials handle, I thought of myself as a liberal, but then again, I started the accidental liberal account for which I guess I've been known in 2017 when I first got on Twitter to combat our then president, and really kind of found myself more of a progressive without knowing what a progressive was. But I'm a lawyer. I stand for the rule of law. And to me, that means that I should speak for those who really either cannot or don't know how to speak for themselves in interpreting and following the rule of law for those people that the Constitution is actually supposed to protect. That's obviously not what we see in today's government, unfortunately, and that's why I become involved in any of social media and an activist and everything that I do outside of my actual job. I kind of like to think of myself as, by day, he's a nearsighted lawyer, and by night, he's a nearsighted lawyer that posts on social media. No, but it's on a serious note. I mean, I'm involved, as I'm sure everybody here is. I know that everybody here is in various activist activities, and shaped by our current body politic. That's where I stand, I suppose.
So I didn't know you were the accidental liberal. Now that I know your Twitter account, I recognize you.
Yeah, I mostly gravitated toward blue sky, like
Blue
just
sky,
about everybody
right.
else. But yeah, I started off with the idea that I'm going to tweet at the then president and current president every day, and suddenly found myself with a Twitter account that grew and didn't know what the hell I was doing, and still am trying to figure it out, I guess.
Okay, Ilana?
Yeah, one of the things that really appealed to me about what you're doing is I'm a big coalitions person, and anybody who's anti-fascist, I'm happy to talk with you. My own political lineage is I've worked in the labor movement extensively. I worked on insurgent campaigns for local Democratic candidates running against the Democratic Party machine, but within the Democratic Party. I'm involved in the Working Families Party in New York. So but I have many friends who are anarchists, and I'll work with whomever is trying to fight the system. I have one of my dear friends is more moderate than me, but she absolutely puts in the work of volunteering on campaigns, and I'll stand with her much more than I'll stand with folks who don't bother to show up and just have lots of opinions online. So I'm glad to have a broad spectrum of people joining us and talking today.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that work. Okay, Porco? How do you feel about pork in politics? Sorry, I've got to stop.
Pork in politics, huh?
You got to tell him about the movie. I don't know if he knows the movie you're named after.
Porco Rosso.
I haven't heard of that movie, no. So
you haven't heard of the Porco Rosso? It's a Studio Ghibli movie. It's an anime.
Oh, that's why I haven't heard of it. I'm not an anime guy.
Well, yeah, you should watch Studio Ghibli movies then, because they're perfect for people who aren't into anime. And Porco Rosso is one of the best ones because it features an Italian flying ace who is an anti-fascist.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a good character to embrace if that's what you're gonna be.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Italian and I'm anti-fascist, and I'm also a unionist. So I work for a union that's a radical union, and we're an anarcho. If we had to pin our politics, it would be anarcho-communism.
So my previous job from which I was laid off for trying to start a union. But the team I was on, I was one of the 3 people that started this team. We ended up being the first contracted group from Google, or for Google. Google, over half of their employees are not their employees; they're subcontracted, and then they treat the subcontracted workers like crap. And our group that wrote the help centers and stuff, we unionized. We were the first group to win the right to become a union. They are officially a union now. The first union that is subcontracted by Google. So
wild. Love to see it.
Awkward.
So when you asked me this, I think my answer was eco-humanist. Because I don't like labels at all. The one label you keep, those who've heard my interviews will regularly hear me use is abolitionist or anti-fascist. They're not political labels, though. They're more like ways of living. But the same goes for humanism. I think that is behind both. And I have to throw the eco part in there because we the humans are destroying the earth, and we the humans are the most destructive. So to me, kind of what has directed my entire life from the moment I was old enough to think is standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, standing up for the vulnerable. And that's what the earth is. So I guess you could also probably call me an eco-socialist. I don't know. I mean, or like I'm close to Porco's politics, probably. I voted Democrat when I felt like we were the option was the Holocaust or a Democrat, and I also am way more focused on local politics because I don't think I have much control. Not that I want control. That word's not good, but I like our collective say is very limited at the federal level. But when we co-founded 10 Demands, the abolitionist organization, our goal was to take those demands to city councils and to mayors, because there are actual abolitionists sitting on city councils, like in New York City, even. So like the work Alana has done with like insurgent candidates in local elections, like that is how we can shift the narrative within that party, if we remain in a system that has to be just this dual option or binary option.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Will, your answer was fucking fabulous, and I could have just said that too. Black Panther Party, community self-defense, yeah, I'm with you, man.
Nice, I appreciate that.
Oh, I liked it. So you're not a controlling murderer, combining your previous two answers, right?
I am mostly controlled and often victimized. No, I don't murder. I am not capable of manipulation or control. I am just a ball of love, and I'm constantly crying. It's safer than fighting, you see. That's what my mom taught me.
So, Rebecca?
I guess in the United States, I'd be considered extremely far left radical, but probably, more of like center left in Europe. I'm a climate scientist, so obviously the environment is the thing that I've dedicated my life, my education, and my career to. But even within my interest in climate scientists, it all boils down to human rights. That's why I went through Katrina as a kid. I grew up in South Mississippi, and my fascination with extreme weather led me to climate science. And part of the only reason why is because I saw so many people die. And
I did not know you were a climate scientist somehow. I didn't.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to have like a one-on-one
right.
interview with a real climate scientist.
All right,
So,
listen. Next week, your assignment is to research the people I've invited in advance. Promise.
Okay, send me a list. I will do it.
No, not you, Rebecca.
Oh,
I'm killing our host here just because he's like, wait a minute, you're that? Oh shit.
Well, that's a fair thing because I got really famous from Florida during COVID and the whistleblowing thing.
Oh, so maybe he knows you as that, you mean?
Most people know me as that.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
But that was just a strange set of circumstances in which I was the manager of the data office and was the only person who had graphic design experience and can build applications and knew statistics and got put into that role. But yeah.
Okay, so I think the way this conversation is going, I sent out some questions earlier, and I'm going to move one to the top of the list, and that is, let's talk about like what David Hogg is doing as like a platform. David Hogg is, for those who don't know, financing challengers to incumbent Democrats, where he feels the incumbent Democrats are maybe getting too lazy, and he wants to give new blood a chance to compete. He's looking mostly at districts where they're safe Democrat districts. Like if you change who the Democrat is still going to win, so it's not going to change the House or anything. At least in terms of, like, we're not going to lose seats we already have. And some people are criticizing him for that. I think that this criticism is stupid because I feel like the Democrats, like there's this kind of vote blue no matter who thing. which after the primaries, I kind of feel like that is the case, because it's like the alternative is, sending people to die in El Salvador prisons. But I also feel like if we want to empower liberals, if we want to empower the left, we can't do that by just saying vote blue no matter who. Like, we need to give them something, like where people that aren't Democrats but are to the left of Trump feel like they have a voice to say something. And so I feel like the way to do that is through primaries. That's how the Republicans shifted their party to the right, is through primaries. So, like, I'm for what David Hogg is doing. I think it's great. I think it's a way to get more voices in, and hopefully a way to get new blood in. But we're just open up that conversation, and we'll start
Looks
off.
like Alana and Rebecca are both ready to rock.
Yeah,
I was going to say yes. And so I think that what he's doing is necessary. My only request is something that I've seen in the past, which is when national level political figures want to weigh in on local races, they really need to do that in conversation with local community organizations who know the terrain, because often the view of what a race might look like from outside the district is different from the inside knowledge of what we know in New York. I'll take, for example, in New York, there was a race for attorney general. And if you were standing from the outside, you might think the obvious reform candidate was this one person who was a national figure. But those of us who'd worked locally knew that he was actually impossible to work with, hated coalitions, and was all about ego. There was another guy who wasn't as well known, but who'd come up from working with a lot of community groups. And we were like, you should talk to him. So yes, I think what David Hogg is saying is necessary, but please work with local groups.
That's an awesome answer.
Yeah, I actually know David, and he's like one of the smartest people I've ever met in politics in general. He still looks, for me, he's always going to be a kid, because I think the first time we met, he was like 18 or 19 years old. And I brought my son, and they were very close in age. And yeah, so to me, he's a kid, but he's the smartest kid I've ever met. And I think it's not just about laziness that he's going after. I mean, that's a part of it. And I think what he means by laziness is more like, you're in a safe seat. You should be in an all out war right now. Like, that's what he means by laziness. Not just like they're not getting much done, but just they're not fighting. And even beyond that, he's really focusing on young candidates for a newer generation. I mean, I think it's as specific as like under 35 or maybe even 30, and progressives. So it's not just, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. You're in a safe seat. It's like, it's not about replacing them so much as allowing someone who's there who would push things forward to have support from this, kind of federal pack, I guess, to rise to the top and have an opportunity to show us what they can do.
I mean, do you think this would be a way? What do you think is this a way to galvanize younger voters and people that are currently feeling left out? The
statistics on younger voters aren't great, especially for Gen Z men, which is a problem that has been looming for like 10 years that nobody really wanted to address. And it goes way back to like Gamergate. But I worry about Gen Z men. There is the largest gender gap in voting preference between men and women of any generation is Gen Z. And they seem to be completely diverging. So if we're going to try to get representation for Gen Z or younger millennials, I think that it's really important to kind of stick with that progressive side. And progressives tend to be more reliable when it comes to, voting regularly. So hopefully that will get people who their only option is like the 80-year-old guy who's been there for 50 years and doesn't meet people or go out in the streets and stuff like that. That would be great. That would be ideal. But I think that's going to go just beyond young people. I mean, I'll just say over 35, so I'm not in that category. But I want to see young people. Like Maxwell Frost is a friend of mine too, and everything he is doing is exactly what they should all be doing. And if we had, 50 Maxwell Frosts, we'd be in good freaking shape.
I love Maxwell Frost. He's not a friend of mine, but I still love him.
Oh, he's the real. I mean, you watch somebody who is all of the real things that they say that they are in real life, and you hope that they go and they don't get corrupted. And you're kind of like, because most people do somewhat, and he hasn't. And I'm just like, if you ever need to just check out from the way things are there and get down to earth. I live right outside DC. We'll go slum it somewhere where I grew up in this area, and it's really crappy, and just hang out. But no, if we had more Maxwells, more AOCs, even though she's not even really in the age group anymore, we'd be in good shape. And it's about finding those people that are already building networks in these places and elevating them.
But I think
I think that'll invigorate a lot of people, not just young people. I mean,
I think right now it's not just young people who are, there are lots of Democrats who are really frustrated with the way the party is not necessarily really fighting, which isn't even like, it's not even really a left-right thing necessarily. It's, it's just people want somebody to fight.
Yeah.
So I think
it's the 30% approval rating of Democrats.
J.B. Pritzker isn't young, really, but I've been pleased that he's trying to protect people here in Illinois, which is where I am. I think there's just a lot of, among sort of all age groups, there's really a sort of like just a hunger for somebody who's going to actually push back. So I think it's a good time to be trying to do primaries for the left, because I think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily consider themselves leftists who would vote for somebody who could, make a clear case that they actually understand the stakes and are going to, do something about it.
I think these are really great points, but I think we got to be careful. I think just like they say, it's not the golf club, it's the golfer. I think we got to be careful. It's not about age, it's about the candidate. And I think right now, silence, this is not the time for silence. Silence is complicity. And I live in Northern Virginia. And I'm not going to criticize my congressman because he's right on most of the issues. But I have never seen him out and about. I've never seen him on Fox News. I haven't seen him anywhere in the fight. And I think we need fighters. We need FDRs. We need Harry Trumans. How do we help people build networks? Someone like me who does have intentions to run. How do I develop a network in a district that is deeply entrenched in the Democratic machine? So how do we find that new blood? How do we give them an outlet? But I think the bigger question is, how can we help these candidates, whether they're incumbents or whether they're challengers? How do we help them inform the public what's important to them? How can we differentiate these candidates? And so I think, cutting through the MSM, cutting through the vast right-wing disinformation machine is something we're failing to do. It's more than just badgering us for money every election cycle and then forgetting about us in between. It's engaging folks on issues. So how do we do that? Those are sorts of questions conversations we should be having.
And Rebecca mentioned,
I agree with that, but
sorry, go ahead, Adam.
No, I think Brian raises a lot of good points that are more party based than they are specifically toward David Hogg's efforts. And the problem, I don't have a problem with primaries per se, especially in safe districts. The issue that I have is I don't think that should be coming from the DNC or somebody associated with the DNC. And a couple of people here, Rebecca and Ilana in particular, have raised and Brian as well, the top down versus bottom up conversation, which I absolutely agree. It should be a bottom up issue. But if you have somebody that is a high ranking member of the DNC pushing a particular person, that gives them a tremendous advantage.
Do you think that doesn't happen right now?
Does it happen already? Yeah.
I understand that. But not really in terms of primaries, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It does.
Has anybody else here run for Congress before?
Yeah. No, but
And I was in Florida, and I mean, I won my primary easily, but that's a whole other thing. But there are tons of races in Florida where the DNC put the full weight behind candidates who turned out not only to not really be Democrats, to be actively helping Trump. Jared Moskowitz is the biggest example there, because he comes from a political dynasty and all this other stuff. They basically pushed out and silenced everybody else in that race to get him the nomination. And there were really good other candidates. And he is the single most MAGA-lined Democrat in Congress. They put Hillary Clinton came and campaigned for him. How many people in a Democratic primary does Hillary Clinton go and campaign for?
You know, can I just mention the other side of that? Like, my brother is running for Texas state legislature. His opponent has like over $1 million for a Texas state legislature. He's the 44th, I think. It's like right outside of San Antonio. He has tried 3 times to contact the DNC. Cannot get any word back at all. Like, it's not just the candidates they endorse. There's also so many candidates that they completely ignore. If you're not in a district that they think you can win, then they don't try. They don't even send you an email.
Yeah. And as Rebecca said, mentioning progressives, they are more reliable, and that's just the beginning. I've heard, if anything, like the sense that I'm getting, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm hearing more. It sounds like, how do we connect with centrists who we can bring over to the left? And that's not, to me, what the focus should be, because that's how we got here. The Democratic Party being afraid to be leftist and, kowtowing or whatever to everything the Republicans say, trying to be Republican light, is exactly how we end up with dictators like Trump. And and so I want to speak less and actually ask if 2 people in particular would be willing to comment, because to me it's also about much more than elections. And if we're really talking from the ground up, we're not talking about the DNC at all. So Alana, you're someone I would ask, but we already started with you. So, Porco and Kazka, Porco being really involved in union organizing, and Kazka, I know you as an on-the-ground activist. You have gone through it. You have been targeted like I have, and then some. Damn, my wife just keeps calling. Anyway, I don't want to talk. So you two, if you have anything to add that kind of takes us to the other side of this conversation, please do. Thank you.
I was just going to say that I think there needs to be a huge focus on evolving and branding. That needs to start now for 2028. I think that the Democrats are just so behind on branding, and it's gross. I mean, I don't know, it's gross to say branding, but right now the brand's trash, and I think it needs to get. If we want any hope in the future, it's got to get better. We got to evolve the tactics that we use. I like the idea of having, the younger candidates is awesome. But yeah, that shouldn't be the only thing that makes someone stand out to vote for.
So, let me ask a quick question.
Sorry. As far as issues go, what is an issue that the Democrats could push more that they have almost ignored?
Healthcare.
Like, for me, it's unions. Like, then get back to unions.
Yes,
healthcare.
Healthcare.
Not seizing on that during the whole Luigi thing is so stupid. So stupid and tone deaf.
Amen.
But the problem is that all of our elected officials come from backgrounds where they identify far more with the CEO of that healthcare organization than they do the people that they hurt. And so for them, they don't get it. They do not get it.
And they've convinced Republican poor people to align with those CEOs, which to me, like, as I'm always, having general strike summits and like, how do we do this? We need to bring people together across aisles, like the aisle, whatever. And meanwhile, like, I run into people who think I'm Republican constantly because of the way that I look, and they just cops, they don't know who the fuck they're talking to. They come up to me constantly and they're saying things like, man, that fucking Luigi, like, I can't believe that CEO's poor family. And I'm like, bro, you are literally like climbing out of a car that's barely running to buy like $3 in groceries next to me. Like, I'm not much richer than you are, and this is what you're saying to me? It means we have a lot of work ahead of us, no matter who the heck we're talking to. But there's a massive population of very misinformed, undereducated people.
I disagree. I not with the undereducation, with the issue. I think that there's a lot of focus on healthcare, specifically with the proposed cuts for Medicaid. I think there's been a ton of discussion about that. What I think that Democrats have really gone away from their roots on is climate. I don't hear any discussion on climate whatsoever. And Rebecca, I feel your pain. My daughter is a climate researcher at Cornell, the ILR school. And this is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart. So it's, you don't hear anything about what Lee Zeldin is doing really at all. So that's a little bit frightening to me.
Who is Lee Zeldin?
He is the chair of the EPA.
And what is he doing that we're not hearing? I mean, like, as long
He's
as
not doing it.
Well, water standards and air and air quality standards have gone down, and you're seeing like kind of the dismantling of all of the regulations that are supposed to be there to protect us. But I think the bigger problem is we don't know what he's doing because there really hasn't been any discussion on it. See,
Exactly.
I've gotten Rebecca so upset about this that I just completely chased her away from the conversation.
No, I didn't. My daughter's home and she's sick today, and she was screaming at me about something, so I had to run and go check on her. I promise. I'm so sorry I had to run out at the minute that somebody mentioned climate.
Yeah.
Come on, I teed you up right for this. Come on.
Sorry.
We win on almost all the issues, right? We
Yes.
win on almost all the issues when asked individually on the issues. When was the last time any of us on this call, any of us, had a lawmaker engage us on any of these issues?
Mm-hmm.
Never.
I might be an exception on this one, but
Are you engaging them, or are you being engaged too? That's the other question. Yeah.
It's a bit of both, but I mean,
they're not engaging, and I hate to say it this way, but like regular people, and that's the real question,
hey,
right?
Exactly. How do you?
You're not regular. That's a
person who happens
compliment.
to have an ungodly amount of people listen to me for some reason.
Right. That's a compliment. You faked it till you made it. I don't know. Same thing as me. But Will, you haven't spoken much. So.
But yeah, I mean, during the whole 2024 campaign, I had more people involved with the campaign messaging me at the DNC or within the Democratic infrastructure, asking me to lay off than I ever did. Like, well, how can we improve? They were not interested in that. They didn't want to listen. They were like, you're really hitting Biden hard on Gaza and stuff. I was like, and why aren't you?
Yeah.
You have to be
critical through that.
Yeah. What pissed me off was even the one issue where they won on, we never pushed back on. Like they like, one of the biggest reasons they won is obsessing over where transgender people urinate. And it's like, who cares?
I don't think
Like,
That
why
was an
do we
influential
need to make a
thing.
federal issue of where transgender people urinate? Like, we could have stood up for trans people instead of just hiding from the issue. That one pissed me off.
I don't think that's
Yeah,
what
but
won them.
that wasn't
honestly.
what won
You
them.
off?
Yeah, the
No.
polling
The
doesn't show that.
economy was what
Well,
won
that
them.
and the inflation and
economy,
the
stupid.
the
Exactly
daily rants about how inflation was all Biden's fault and no pushing back on that. But to me,
Well,
it
here's
was
the
like
thing.
inflation was the biggest one, and the transgender thing, and the they them thing. Like, we care about you, they care about they them. Like, that was the second issue.
That was great marketing. To be honest,
But we have data that wasn't persuasive to people. Like, we have data that wasn't persuasive. The thing is, everybody lived through a period of time in which the government showed that when they want to, they're able to come in, make direct payments, provide healthcare, and provide services to them, as they did earlier in the ongoing pandemic. And then when they stopped doing that for people lost, they saw what it could be like to actually have the government make a meaningful improvement in their lives that was visible to them. And then the government chose to stop doing that. They chose to pretend the pandemic was over, which it isn't. And suddenly you're not getting a check anymore. You're getting kicked off your health care. The Democrats did not talk about how everybody was getting kicked off their health care. And in fact, Democrats were complicit in that happening. So people became completely disenchanted with government's ability to help people because they saw what government could do if it wanted to.
I'm not so
But
sure that's
we're
accurate
all
because
missing the issue here,
the Democrats were talking about this. They were talking about it, but it's extremely hard to get through when you have half the population daily getting brainwashed by a vast right-wing disinformation machine.
And when people got kicked off their health care, all they know is they got kicked off their health care. They had Medicaid and then they didn't.
But they didn't know why.
Getting sick because the pandemic was not over. And that, I got to tell you, that was the worst way to start things off, was to force the people who went to the State of the Union thing not to mask as some kind of victory over COVID right before it got way worse. That to me was, I mean, as a COVID person involved with all that and tracking how many people were getting sick every day of my life for an ungodly amount of days. When I saw and heard that, I was like, this is not good. This is not a good thing to do, to pretend that it wasn't a problem. I mean, I asked people this, and this I got a lot of shit for over, and this is probably why most people don't want to work with me within the DNC. I was hard on Biden when it came to COVID, very hard. I mean, geez, look what I don't know. I don't want to say sacrifice because that's weird, but look what happened to me because I chose to be vocal on COVID. I had guns pointed at my kids. They threatened to shoot them right in front of me. I mean, that's pretty freaking extreme. But I keep asking people, name one policy difference, one, between Biden and Trump that's not the airplane thing that was rejected by the courts. Name one. He left it to the states, just like Trump did. And the states that wanted to do something about it did, and the ones that didn't.
Didn't he do some things to federalize the distribution?
PPP, yeah.
But that infrastructure was already in place. We have the same infrastructure with distribution of influenza vaccines. They basically just use the same one. Then there's no guarantee that it wouldn't have been the
on
same.
using it, from what I understand. Like, obviously, you know more about this issue than I do, so I'm asking. I'm not arguing.
No, he didn't change anything as far as distribution. In fact, Trump was quite proud of the COVID vaccine and the rapid speed at which it was developed and getting it out to people. And to
be fair, he actually deserves credit for that.
Well, he does not. That was not him. That was German scientists at Pfizer.
Okay, when I say he deserves credit for that, he deserves credit for not screwing it up. Like, he actually stayed out of the way and let them do it, which for Trump is pretty much like showing restraint on something, which, I mean, it was self-interested restraint, yes, but still.
Not screwing something up is
I know that's like
getting a ribbon for that. You stay out of the way. It's kind of a lot. But as far as logistically goes, and his policy towards schools and everything else, he tried to implement the vaccination and masks plans at the federal agencies which he could control, and of course those were rejected by courts. But there were a lot of things that should have been done a lot differently that people like me and Andy Slavitt, who we were both kind of these huge COVID influencers during 2020. And they recruited him to be the head of their data their entire data system. When Biden took over, everybody was really glad because like Andy is not only brilliant, he is honest. He doesn't lie to people. And Andy quit a few months in. And that to a lot of people was a sign that things were not going as planned. I was running the only national database for school cases in the country with Google. And when Biden was won, we were reached out directly from Biden's new team to be like, yeah, we're going to integrate the schools data into our new COVID, database and stuff. And they never did that. We decommissioned everything because they were like, yes, this is very important to us. We're absolutely going to do it. And then they just never did it.
Okay, so I'm going to just mention I scheduled for an hour. I think this conversation is going great. We can go past that. But if anybody else wants to, has other obligations or whatever and needs to leave, then.
Well, Porco came back and has not had much of a chance to speak. I would
Yes,
love to hear
I'm
his
glad he came back.
perspective on some of this.
I actually wanted to ask Porco something, kind of related to something we were talking about earlier, and Rebecca had mentioned it. Since I'm not involved at all in gaming or anything, what is with this whole gamer right-wing kind of embracing of fascism thing? Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, I can speak on that a little bit. That kind of goes back to the whole Gamergate thing. That was a real
I don't even know what Gamergate is. I know people.
Okay, so
There are many books.
Gamergate was this harassment campaign that led by like 4chan, 7chan, and a bunch of these online message boards where they congregate, where predominantly you see neo-Nazi rhetoric and posting of all kinds of horrible imagery. That's what those boards are. And the whole Gamergate thing basically was a harassment campaign against Zoe Quinn and a couple of other female people who were women that were just games journalists. That's their entire job and position. A bunch of lies were fabricated, and again, harassment campaigns. I mean, even to this day, Zoe Quinn and the other women are being harassed over and over and over again by the same, places like the Quartering, all of these different outlets that you see for right-wing video game angst or
Is this just like
propaganda.
incels that play games all day and you blame women for not
I
wanting
mean, you that's definitely a group. That's a group within a group. Like you're close to the bullseye. Yeah. This is a wide-ranging group of different types of fascists, but also just people that are maybe misogynistic or grew up in an environment that facilitated these views. And it's something that is complicated because video games by their very nature are just an interactive medium, and it kind of gets out of hand because fandoms pop up, and fandoms are a lot like cults, and it creates this kind of extremist atmosphere where extremism can grow really, really fast and create these entire communities and blowouts like we saw with Gamergate, like we're seeing with Gamergate 2. These are all things that we that are just offshoots of the same extremism and fascism that we're fighting. But it's to answer the question that you asked initially, though, with David Hogg, I think it's good that he's primarying people, because there's a lot of people that just don't do anything, and we need people who are willing to do things in Congress, and that's why we have to. I mean, if we're going to rely on this system, because my politics relies on uh, Murray Bookchin's confederated socialism, and what that means is that there's independent cells of or groups that can function outside and within the constraints of the government.
Yeah, and that's great. I was going to ask you, like, because that's often how I answer questions, like, assuming that we still have prisons and borders, now I can answer your question. Because truly, I would like to say that there should be no Israel or Palestine, for instance, because there should be no nation states, period. There should be no borders, period. That's just an example. So I wanted to ask that of you, like, knowing, as an anarchist, clearly we live in nothing of that type of society from a national level, but there are these communities, like there's these co-ops there, like all over the country, where there are little, enclaves, socialist or anarchist enclaves that are able to function, and to live the way they want to live, I think, to a degree, as best they can under this oppressive system. And so I was curious what your, how you would answer that, like, what your recommendations would be that would maybe benefit people in those communities, but also the larger population.
That's a pretty easy one for me. I come from unionism, so we believe in UBI, we believe in healthcare, we believe in if the economy drops to a certain level, people need stimulus checks. I mean, getting paid is part of the unionism that we believe in, and we believe in the radical unionism that we believe in believes in building support structure so that people can go on strike. We pay them,
Yes.
you know
Mutual aid. Yes. Thank you.
mutual aid. We use mutual aid to a lot of times to really build these coalitions out, and we've had a lot of success, especially. I mean, everything changed with COVID. I started probably 5, 6 years ago, and it was right before COVID hit that I started with the IWW. And I spent a lot of time kind of rewiring my brain and re-understanding just how to connect to communities and connect to people. Like I just recently, I just stopped into my local dispensary and I actually unionized them. So,
That's fucking fire.
they're gonna start a union with us.
Hell
And
yeah.
that's something that, it's just, you never know where you might be. You could be at a Burger King franchise. You can still help unionize that environment. It's just hard because there's a hostile environment, a corporate architecture built to destroy unionism efforts. And the union, they were trying to form a union at that dispensary a year ago, but it got union busted. So it took me and the IWW putting in effort to try and help them build a union, and now it's happening. They're
It's very
they're
cool.
working with us, and it's coming along from what I understand. It's a slow process because you have to slowly radicalize people. You have to
Yeah.
prove to Joe at work that the AC unit not working in the summertime is a threat to your productivity and a threat to your
Yeah.
livelihood.
Yeah.
Like these are you have to come at people with brass tacks issues. You may not agree with everything Joe has to say, but if you can get Joe to agree that trans people are human and that you're worthy of basic income and health care and extra pay money on your paycheck every year, that'll get Joe to sign up for a union pretty quick.
Yep. Absolutely. And which party if any. Well, there's only two main ones. I guess my real question is: are the Democrats supportive of unions?
To a degree. They're certainly not anti-union. Under Biden, we had some of our biggest wins, and so far under Trump, it's been an absolute nightmare.
All right, that's an
So
important thing for
we
people
can
to
work
know.
within we can work within the confines of the system, but if the system's outright hostile to unionization efforts, it becomes an uphill battle. But the good news is if they really go back and they try to repeal some of the laws that they're talking about repealing, um, it'll bring back an era of unionization and unionism that we haven't seen of like radical armed unionism since the early 1900s.
They don't want that.
They
Hey,
really don't want that.
Porco, I have a question related to that.
Yeah.
And maybe this can bring in the next round of conversation. Of the and like of the people who realistically have a chance to win, like so, like obscure people or people that would really not be able to win in 2028. Of the people you think have a realistic chance to win,
I think
which one do you
AOC
think
has a chance.
would be AOC? I would say has a chance. Who do you think would best represent the best represent unions? Personally, I think AOC and Tim Walz would both be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be a fantastic duo, and I would not be opposed to that because AOC has appeared on the union line. You know, there's a good picture of her where she's handing out Cafe Bustelo to everybody. And you know what people don't understand is Cafe Bustelo is actually a union made coffee. So it's union made goods and union made things, buying union. That's very good. And in fact, you know, if you're buying Lay's potato chips, you're actually buying unionized potato chips. But
You should like post about that so people know. That's the kind. Might sound my brain works. I'm sorry, but you probably are
no,
like,
it's
who gives a
good.
shit? like
No,
like
no.
No,
people will be
AFL
like,
does a
it's
few
all
times
good.
a year. They'll do shopping lists of union made stuff for Memorial
that's
Day,
so
Labor Day,
smart.
Valentine's
They
Day,
should
and
do
stuff like
like a
that.
commercial where they say this is a chip off the Union block or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, don't they
You know,
normally have the little sigil on the product itself? Normally,
I don't know. Porco, you notice? Yeah,
It depends.
I'm not sure
yeah.
I've noticed the sigil or anything, but I have heard, you know, that they are union made chips. So,
All right.
and
You know
some
what I get
products will
annoyed with
have
about
like
the
paper
union?
products will have like the little sigil on them if they're union made. I just know that from buying stuff during the campaign and
cool
made sure
to
it was all
know.
union.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
start. Why do people conflate unions with communism?
There was literally a government movement to do that 100 million years ago. Like that's deliberate. They had a campaign that was organized by the government to do that. And it just stuck, but less so because people forgot because it was a long time ago. So I think when you talk to young people, they have the most broadly supportive view of unions because
there
they
was an
weren't around for
there
the
was an
worst of
era
that.
when unionism was strong in this country. And it was also during some of the most bloody history of this country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the early 1900s from 1905 onward to the unionism was incredibly strong, and there were so many efforts. And now we're seeing a return of unionism. Union growth has been strong lately, despite of Trump and despite Biden. Because as much as Biden didn't actually harm unionism, he didn't do a lot to support it either.
I know
Um,
from my work with unions, people that were in unions really felt betrayed with the whole train workers. Was it trains?
No, that was not the
yeah,
opinion of labor
there was
unions
the
after
big
the deal was
train
struck.
worker.
That was not accurate to the actual unions that were impacted by the deal after the deal was struck. We had the most pro-labor NLRB in the lifetime of like anybody alive now. under the Biden administration? Are there things that I would have wanted to do who didn't? I mean, absolutely, obviously, but like he was the most pro-union president of our lifetime.
There was a lot of stuff that we wanted at the union, and we've talked to other unions that really wanted more. And the way the train deal was struck was not the way we wanted it to fall at all. We wanted a rail strike, and a lot of people I knew wanted a rail strike.
Did the workers who worked on the rail want a rail strike?
Yes, because they weren't getting what they wanted out of the contract. And in the end, they compromised with pressure from Biden. And I believe a general strike is necessary to change the landscape of how we're being paid to implement UBI. We have to actually group together and band together and realize our collective worth and fight a collective struggle.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on that and got Sarah Nelson to to come in and like speak to a group of us, and really it would be and I think I might have brought it up on this call already too. It would be remarkably effective, but it can't be a leftist movement. And I know by the way you were describing Joe at work, making connections, where can we agree so that we can get you to sign up? That's the critical part. That's as Sarah taught me, and I love her. I really respect her. Number one is it's got to be the whole fucking population of poor and working people. Number two, as we talked about, is a national infrastructure essentially of mutual aid networks, because tons of people are going to either voluntarily leave work or be fired, and are going to rely on that. And lastly is to ensure media is on our side in advance so that we have significant media coverage and positive media coverage. Those were the three things that I took away.
Not to interrupt, but we also have to have the tradesmen and the infrastructure to, if a pipe bursts in the local community, we have to make sure that we have someone that can actually fix the local community's burst pipe.
Point.
You have to provide the comfort and sense of infrastructure that people have already been accustomed to, and before you can better that environment. And that's something that it's systemic, it's a lot like building Legos. You're building up layer by layer by layer by layer to build something, and you're working with each other. And that's the opposite of unity, because unity is unison. They want, when the left speaks of unity, they often speak of speaking, walking, talking, and being a certain way, instead of what can I do to work with this person and respect that the individual.
Yeah.
And
I literally was just talking about this.
And
there's a distinct difference between unity and okay. I was just gonna read it for anyone who hadn't. It's not me, or I probably wouldn't read it because that would be an asshole move. But there's a distinct difference between unity and solidarity, where solidarity recognizes our differing social contexts and positions, but still highlights the criticality of working together. Unity pushes a violent doctrine of sameness. It allows for individuals in positions of relative dominance to set agendas that more marginalized and disenfranchised individuals and communities are dogmatically expected to follow. That's from Z Samudzi. I think that's how you pronounce it. She's a visiting assistant professor at Clark. I don't know her personally, but I've read, and I should say they, I'm not sure what their pronouns are either, but an incredibly poignant differentiation that I just happened to be making like a day or two ago.
Class solidarity is what they really mean when they say unity. They want class solidarity. And brother, you best believe the rich people have class solidarity. We on the left do not have class solidarity.
So hey, I got a question for you guys then, and I'll let Rebecca answer first, because she seems to be the most strategically thinking in terms of politics.
Wow. I don't know. Alana's pretty strategic.
But and then we'll go to Alana because I think both of them have him. But here's
The rest of
the
us are
question.
morons.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
teasing.
that's especially no. I'm okay. So here's the question. My view is that this is the way we might be able to reach the most MAGA voters. MAGA voters tend to be self-centered, but if you can, like this, like you know, unions are best for you if you can breach that firewall. And what I've found with the MAGA voters that I have flipped, it's like once you get them to change their mind on one thing and they realize Trump is lying about one thing, it's like the dam starts to break apart, and then then they become like anti-MAGA. But I think that this is one area where we could really break through is with unions, because like a large part of them are working class, non-unions. But if we could flip them on the union issue, I think that would be a way to win back elections. So we'll start with Rebecca, and then we'll go to Alana.
You're gonna wish you didn't just call me the most strategic thinking person. Just rip it now. Fuck MAGA voters. Trying to adjust our policies or get those people to come back to the light is a fruitless, hopeless endeavor. You might be able to get a couple of guys like my dad, the truck driver, to realize that, these new laws requiring all truck drivers to like pass basically ESOL exams are going to harm the industry, which is already understaffed. That kind of stuff, sure, you can get it to that. But again, this run to the right, let's out Republicans or try to outcompete with Republicans for Republican voters is why we lost.
Okay, I'm not saying we run to the right. I don't think strengthening unions is a run to the right. I'm thinking
no, that's absolutely not. Although they've done a really good job of trying to make unions seem like was mentioned earlier as a democratic thing now. It's anti-big business. It's unions do nothing but, ruin companies and whatever bullshit they spew. If you're on a personal one-to-one level, I think that stuff is great. I think if you're just talking to somebody that trying to get them to see that side of things is nice. Mm-hmm. But as a national strategy, we would be wasting time, money, energy, trying to convince MAGA voters to vote for Democrat because we're pro-union and unions are good for them. And I think the state of the Democratic Party right now is so bad that we need to focus more on getting our own people back together and back involved and, listen to them and find some compromise with these key issues that are dividing us before we even, as a political party, try to think about how we can reach out to MAGA. Because until we can get progressives to come back into the fold, Democrats aren't going to win shit.
That's great. Thank you for that. I think that's a great calibration. We need to worry more about getting the left back in the fold than we've been trying so hard to get the center right voters that we've lost all the left voters. And
there are more people on the progressive part of the Democratic Party wing than there are centrist or left-leaning Republicans to get to crossover. And when we talk about, I hate that the Democrats do not push back on this narrative that this election was a mandate. To me, that is absolutely fucking ridiculous. He won by 1.6% and really only
because a plurality. He won in a plurality. How the hell is a plurality a mandate?
So we don't push back. We just kind of let them lead the narrative and then we follow, which is politically speaking the worst thing that you can do.
In 2008, when Obama won, and everybody kept insisting that even though he won in a landslide with 60 senators, that wasn't a mandate, but somehow this is a mandate. Like,
because
come on.
We don't do anything. It's like we just
exactly because
we don't do it.
They're not afraid, and we are exactly.
Yes, and we think that we need to. So what Republicans have masterfully done, and this actually the ties between where we are now in Gamergate, it's a straight line. What they have done is they have set the speaking points, and we are responding. And politically speaking, that is the worst strategy that you could possibly have. You need to set the speaking points. They work so well together. And if you took if you're a big fan of Taylor Renz, which I am, she's amazing. She's a good friend of mine. You'll notice that she talks a lot about how the right ecosphere was built. Like, I actually have her book back here, Extremely Online. If you don't know anything about Gamergate or why social media is the way it is right now, read it. She's a brilliant writer. It goes by very quickly. Although I did skip the whole part on Snapchat because I've never used it. And that was like an awkward period where I wasn't online. But we don't work together and cross promote and flood the zone the way that they do, because they're setting the conversation and we're just trying to catch up. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party is also allergic to anything that is potentially controversial. They're cowards. They do not want to openly embrace people who could be seen as imperfect or controversial. And when you use that kind of fear of controversy and you combine it with the fact that the right is setting the tone, the right can then decide who they want to make controversial on the left, create an entire controversial campaign that is paid for by the same PR company that hired Johnny Depp and Justin Baloney or whatever the fuck his name is, and blast out millions of dollars in a Mossad-style disinformation campaign to destroy that person and make them untouchable. So, and the Democrats will not back them up. And I am like, for some reason, Teflon to these people. They have sunk in over $12 million to one of these PR firms to try to destroy my reputation. And it worked within some, I'll be honest, within some Democratic circles. They hate me now because of the online shit. But that is one of the things. It's like when they talk to me, they want me to reach out to my people. They don't want me to be a voice. They want me to do the labor and use my influence, but they don't want to be seen as supporting it because I criticize the Democratic Party. And they, like, if you look at Midas now, somebody said Midas was progressive the other day, and I almost pissed myself laughing. But the idea that, because they are so safe and so controlled and so much of a Democratic Party mouthpiece, that their dissent with regard to what the Democratic Party doing is not allowed. But they don't like people like me because I will call Biden out for the COVID bullshit and for Gaza and for everything else because I don't fall in line. And it's a dangerous set of circumstances in which we don't have kind of, even like Tim Pool, who is no one. He is no one of import, was making $500,000 a month to peddle Russian disinformation, got caught, said he didn't know what he was doing. And nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares. Nothing changed. Nothing fucking changed.
And has tried to get two people on this call.
His first name is pronounced,
and he's doing just fine too.
His first name is pronounced Seth, not Tim. Seth Pool.
Oh, God. Okay. Sorry. Yep. I'm very blonde.
Low on the update.
Yeah. LOL. But yeah, that makes it hard for us. That's why, like, David Hogg, to me, is exactly what the Democratic Party needs. He is already famous, super famous. He does ruffle some feathers because he's like me. I think I see that in him. He speaks his mind. And if something is stupid, he's going to say it's stupid. Now, he'll probably be more reluctant to be that open now that he has this official position. But he is one of those people who absolutely supports the main principles of the Democratic Party. He wants to advance the Democratic Party's goals and aims. He is really smart, and MAGA comes at him constantly. And if you don't think that MAGA has a big role to play and the supposed backlash to what David Hogg is proposing and the reason why we even asked about it, then you're mistaken, because they are absolutely fueling the bullshit about how Democrats are mad at David Hogg, because we're not. But yet it was like the first question we answered with. It's like they have actually managed to get Democrats to ask other Democrats what they think about David Hogg, because we see online other people reporting that there's backlash to it, even though there's really not. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like, they can do this. They can make us turn on our own people and we won't even know it. It's just incredible. I'm like deep into the media harassment campaigns as somebody who's gone through it. And the mechanisms that they do that were really developed in Gamergate, the dog piling, the hordes of fake accounts, the fake news websites that will create an article smearing someone, or the AI generated news that has like no substantiation and it's just rumors, the taken out of context claims, and just all of it is being weaponized against every single one of us that manages to like have a real impact. And
one thing I can't stand is this way that like some people have this perspective that we have to be like Democrat versions of MAGA, to where like we have to defend everything Biden says and does, regardless of whether we agree with it or not, or we're not like really Democrat. Like I feel like should be separate. Like I cannot agree with everything Biden says and does and still say he's a good president. Like I don't have to like I can agree with 80% of what he says and does and say, look, he got more accomplished in his first term than any president since Lyndon B. Johnson, and a lot of it was really, really good stuff, but he wasn't perfect. Like that is like a factually correct statement, and I feel like some people feel like if you say he got stuff done, then it's like you're being overly apologetic, and other people say he wasn't perfect, then you're being overly critical. It's like you can't have a nuanced stance on things these days. And
the internet does not exist for nuance. I don't know if anybody's told you this. It does not. Nuance is not something that's really promoted, especially on like character limited social media websites. I get what you're saying, because it is frustrating, because you'll notice now, and this happens to me sometimes, which is very bizarre, because I was at one point, there was a Breitbart article about me, how I was the loudest white woman on Gaza on the internet. And then I was a bitch and all this other stuff, and I was a race traitor, whatever. But sometimes if I mention something else that's happening in the world, somebody else will comment like, "Oh, what about Gaza?" It's like, are you fucking me? You're coming at me with that shit? Like, I never shut up about Gaza, but it is very frustrating, because there's this misplaced like anger and direction. I would say that Biden was okay. I think that, the Infrastructure Act was phenomenal. Obviously, I would like to have seen things go further, but as far as what it was and what they got done, that was great. Economically, as far as the general economy goes, he was pretty steady. I would say steady. But the second that somebody mentions Gaza, though, we get hit back with these Democrats that you're talking about. Like, these purity tests. If I see one more fucking white man tell me that we cannot have a purity test when I mention genocide, I'm going to lose my shit. Genocide is not a purity test. It's a bare minimum. It's a low bar. Like, if you can't, it's basically on the ground. If you can't step over it, then there's a problem. But that frustrates me as a progressive, because they're like, oh, we can't have these purity tests. We're talking about 2028. First of all, we need to talk about 2026, not 2028. We have the opportunity for a reprimand next year, and we don't need to be skipping ahead into the next 3 years. For all we know, half the people that are on that slate won't even be around anymore. We don't know. But if I mention that we will not support a candidate who supports Israel, and then I get the purity test line, for me, it's mostly a block. I just won't even fucking bother with it anymore. But in the other respect, if I suggest someone who apparently doesn't have a perfect opinion on something else, and then I get that, I'm frustrated as well. And so it's just you're right. It's not nuanced, but some of these things, if we're talking about unity, which I guess was the premise of this conversation, then there needs to be a hard conversation within the different factions of the Democratic Party about what the bare minimum is to bring everybody back into the fold. Because I can tell you right now, progressives aren't coming back unless we stop supporting Israel. We're not doing it.
Sorry, you've been sitting there. We haven't. Where are you weighing in on all this stuff? Sorry to forget about you. Did we lose you?
Who did you say?
Oh, Kazka.
Okay.
Sorry, I had my microphone muted. If I was going to add anything, I would just say that Democrats really suck at authenticity, being being genuine to come across to me a lot, like energy wise, as liars or someone who's faking being a certain way instead of just being themselves. And I think that hurts us because I don't know, authenticity is like ranked really, really high on how people, how much value people have on, or how they judge someone else, I guess, basically. But I wish that the Democrats would also work on linguistics, because we're not, if you want certain people and you're not speaking their language, or you're saying you're using words that just automatic put up roadblocks. I don't know, like, you know how Frank Luntz did that, right? Like, he would take a policy and then he would twist it with the words to get, you know, so to overcome some people's emotional roadblock on it. That's all I would say is, like, linguistically we got to do better.
So, like, what would be a message you think that the Democrats could address, and how would you address it?
I don't know. The climate is like really, really important, but if you start using those environmental or climate with those words, it automatically slows people down too. So I don't know.
And,
I mean, if I was in charge, I would work more on having like the linguistic part, and I would also get off the gun topic, because it's never gonna happen. And that's something that people could do at a local level, but the whole gun conversation just really, I don't know. I mean, it's good. I wish we could do what Democrats wanted to do with guns, but it's a wedge. I think it's too much of a wedge. And if it's not gonna make a difference, then why harp on it?
You know why?
Can I add in something right here, because you mentioned Frank Lutz and climate. Okay. So this is maybe something that most people don't know. In the scientific literature throughout really the last 50 years, we did not, until the 1990s, didn't use the term climate change. We said exclusively global warming, because climate change is something that happens throughout different periods for different causes. It was Frank Luntz who came up with the thing to call it climate change instead of global warming, because he thought that if it's just climate changes all the time. You know, it's no big deal. This is normal. This happened. Global warming was more, as they say now, alarmist and threatening. So Frank Luntz test study, and he's pretty good at this shit. I'll give him credit for that. Focus tested all of these different terms, and climate change was the one that was most disarming to the most amount of people and made them not afraid or worried about it. And he was so successful at this campaign that he actually got academics eventually to stop calling it global warming in peer-reviewed literature and switch over to climate change. So, I mean, you mentioned Frank Luntz and then you said climate, and so in linguistics, and I'm like, he's the reason that we call it climate change instead of global warming, which is kind of an obscure fact. Most people don't know if they're not like deep into the field. But that kind of stuff, again, that is the same. They led, we followed.
Right.
That is the problem. I mean, I try my best to mention climate change, but I also mention global warming. But I'm a paleoclimatologist, so I actually do study climate change, not just current global warming. But the public doesn't make that distinction. Right. Although I have to dramatically disagree with you on the guns issue. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So on the guns issue, I would like to. I used to be a youth minister. I would go to college campuses and do Bible studies with college students and stuff. And I was in Chicago when there was the shooting at Northern Illinois. And so we had some kids in our church that went to UN, went to that church, to school. So we went out there to just visit with them. And I met probably 200 kids. Most of them weren't in our church. And I asked them all,
awesome.
Like, what were you doing? What were your thinkings? Because the building the shooting was in was like 10 yards away from the cafeteria. And they heard the gunshots. So everybody that was, and it was like right around lunchtime too. So the cafeteria was full. And so like everybody was running because they didn't know that this guy wasn't going to come in there and start shooting people. And so I, like they were all hiding and stuff, and I was asking them, like what were you thinking? And I must have talked to 200 of them, and they were all talking about, they were texting their girlfriends, their boyfriends, their moms, their dads, their family. They were talking about, hey, I don't know if I'm going to live.
Yeah.
And so they're like texting people saying goodbye.
Yeah.
The people they love goodbye, right? And it wasn't until I was on my way home that I realized not one of them said, I wished I had a gun.
No, they don't. They don't.
That is like, to me, the gun issue is like, you have like 10% of people that say we shouldn't have nobody should have guns at all. And like
I'm in that 10.
10% of people say, no, anybody should be able to buy any guns they want. And it's like, I think some people, like the idea that you should be able to have a rifle to go hunting is fine. I don't think that a terrorist should be able to walk into Walmart and buy an AR-15 with 200-round mags and a bunt stock and just start shooting everybody in the store immediately. Like, I think that there's like 80% of the country agrees on gun control, in that there should be some right to own a gun, but it should be limited.
Yes.
And I feel like most people that drive the conversation are the no guns people versus the anyone's guns people. And so like, I think that could be actually the most unifying message we could deliver.
It is one of the most popular ideas in the United States as far as consensus with the majority goes.
Yeah.
But what did Democrats even mention guns in 2024 once? Because I don't remember it. Disengaging with the two topics that are
Kamala Harris said she had a gun.
Yeah, she was actually pro-gun. Disengaging with two of the consistently top 5 issues for young people, global warming and gun control, was devastating to her campaign for youth. I mean, it was devastating. I mean, we're talking about an entire generation who, and this is really a thing that kids do, who look at the exits every time they walk in a room without even thinking about it, who go to a movie theater and just look just in case, because they live like that. I mean, the rest of us, I'm a mid-millennial, so I remember Columbine, but I was still like, 10 years old when that happened? And then the Virginia Tech thing happened the year that I went to college. And so that was more personal, but I never had to worry about, until Sandy Hook, I think, really, I never had to worry that little children were just going to be slaughtered in mass at an elementary school. And that didn't just happen once. It's happened again and again and again. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, for sure we need gun control. I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying that I think we need to learn how to talk about it different. That's all.
Amen.
Well, there might be a conversation that needs to be had among different people.
Yes.
When we're in progressive spheres, it's probably, I don't think it's radical to believe that nobody should have a right to a gun. If you look at Europe, most places don't allow just anybody to go get a gun. They don't. Right. I mean, to have a handgun in Greece, there's only like 14 civilians in the whole country that are authorized to have handguns, because you have to go through all of this different shit. And I know one of those people, and he's a former police officer of 30 years. Even they have to go through additional measures to have guns, because the idea is that if nobody's allowed to have them, there's no reason for anybody to need one when they're out walking around, like at the mall. And so it's just, to be in a place where that was never a concern, like most places in Europe, it is completely different. It's hard. It's weird to me that America is so entrenched with this idea of everybody having a gun, that we forget that the rest of the civilized world had moved on from that, the last time they had their revolutions, and that they don't have these problems. And yet we are, and we do.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to hop off. I've really been fun to meet and connect with folks here. I just want to shout out, if you're the kind of person who enjoys conversations like this and wants to hear from organizers from around the country, the next wave of candidates running for office who are aligned people, Netroots Nation is an annual conference that is the largest grassroots progressive conference in the country. And it's this summer. It's in New Orleans because it goes to different places in the country every year, trying to reach as many different communities as possible. And it's August 7th through 9th in New Orleans. Go to netrootsnation.org. It's a space that's been really important to me in my life coming up in the movement. And really, like if you're someone who's going to in-person events, like this is a great conference to be at for sure. There also will be virtual content, which I'm working on. So yeah.
I'll drop once we're done here, I'll drop a link to that in the
fabulous. Yeah. Because this just feels like a Netroots crew here. So I thought I'd say that. So, but thank you so much, you guys. It's really cool. Yeah. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye. I got to head out too, but sorry if I've done a little bit of talk too much. You can feel free to meet me at any time.
Oh, hey, you know what? Rebecca, I would really love to have you come on and just talk about climate change. I've been trying to get a real climate science scientist on this show for a long time. I think that there is so much stupid disinformation out there that I would just like to have somebody come on and explain the science of climate change. Like, how do we know it's man-made? How do we know
that is very fundamental stuff. Yeah, I would love to. But if you were looking to do something timely and newsworthy, like maybe this weekend or something, Florida is passing a law to ban the non-existent dispersants of weather control chemicals.
Well, it's a good thing we're getting rid of that.
Yes, a thing that doesn't exist, we have banned. I mean, talk about, like fixing problems that don't exist. The weather modification conspiracy theories are, there was actually a report released like 2 days before this happened that they're worried that key NOAA infrastructure is at risk of terrorist attack because of conspiracy theories about weather modification. And so it's not just like this abstract thing anymore. We're talking about states that are basically attacking climate and weather scientists by promoting conspiracy theories that are leading people to become violent. And it's insane. It's insane. It's not surprising for Florida, but and everything that Trump is doing was ground tested in Florida, by the way. Like, I've been trying to warn people for this about years. It's like the fascist playbook that he is using, every single one of those things was grounds tested in Florida first. And that means that you can expect some even worse shit right down the pipeline.
That is amazing. And can you tell us what is Masakala News?
Mesoscale. So
Mesoscale
is this kind of obscure part of the atmosphere where you're not microscale, you're not like at the absolute smallest level, but you're not kind of the synoptic worldview. You get into the details of these things that happen in flux. And so it's Mesoscale News. It's my newsletter on Substack. I have 56,000 subscribers. Most of them are free because I think that some things are important. But if you wanted to support me, you can pay like $5 a month or whatever. And I give discounts to people in Florida because I pity you for having to still be in Florida.
Poor Florida.
Poor Florida. I tried. I came back and fought after everything happened.
I'm one of those people that even when I say the word in my head, duh is spelled D-U-H.
Yeah, it's sad because there are good people there. They're not all like that. And there has been a certain amount of tyranny in that state since 2020. And
you know what? Maybe you could answer this question for me if you have time.
Yeah.
How come it's shifted so far to the right as it's also like become this, like senior retirement home? Like, I don't understand why how does that particular conflagration work? Shouldn't old people want to protect their Social Security?
Old people don't think that their Social Security is actually at risk. Republicans, for some reason, have convinced all old people that they're not a threat to them, which is so bizarre. But most of the people who move to Florida are not Social Security dependent elderly people. They're wealthy ones. They have houses they can sell and relocate. Florida is attracting upper middle class white retirees.
So these are like snowbirds that fly south for the winter.
That eventually just were like, you know what, it's too cold in the winter, I'm going to move down there. Or they move there specifically because of the politics. Older people tend to be more conservative in general. When you consider the fact that, you have wealthier older people, that increases the odds that they're going to be more conservative. They're not dependent on the social services that are most at risk, and they also don't believe that those things really are at risk. And so that makes it more conservative. At the same time, they have been losing young people and young families. They're hemorrhaging young people. So that also skews it further to the right. And there was a lot of voter suppression acts, both bills that were passed and very public, horrific events, like the raiding of voters on camera in Florida as part of a propaganda show. People who were legally registered to vote, and the supervisors of elections had approved them and sent them a voting card, and then they voted. Turns out, because of some weird loophole, they weren't actually allowed to vote because they hadn't gone through the whole felon restoration process yet. Raided them. One man was drug out in his underwear, had no idea what was happening. The cops had no idea what was happening, but they filmed the video and shared it as them cracking down on elections. That was so chilling to people across the state. Not to mention that Florida represents almost half of all disenfranchised voters in the country. So people who are convicted of felonies and have not had their voting rights restored. They are almost half of the whole country's total. Over 1 million people in Florida do not have the right to vote because they were convicted of even minor felonies. In some states, stealing somebody's crab trap is a felony conviction. Like, I don't know if you've ever, I grew up in the deep South near New Orleans, mostly lived in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Florida. Crab traps have designated markers, but sometimes you're out there, it comes off, you forget, you grab one, you can go, that's a felony. You could lose your right to vote for life.
And there's a kind of a de facto, I don't know how to put this, sort of conservative bias involved in how you get the felony, like the right to vote after a felony, right? Like if you pay off your fines, then you can vote again. But the more wealthy you are, the more able you are to pay off your fine. So like it's
actually worse than that. So in 2018, Florida voters approved a ballot resolution. And again, this in Florida, you have to get, I think, 60%. It's not just a simple majority. Right, That's why the abortion amendment failed, because it got 57 or 58% and it didn't reach the 60. We approved, and I voted for, a ballot amendment to restore voting rights to felons.
And that went by like 80%, right? Like it wasn't even.
It was a landslide. Yeah. And DeSantis intervened, because the way that it had been working was there was this like tribunal panel that you had to schedule an appointment for, get all this information ready. Evie, just 1 minute, okay? I'm almost done. 1 minute. And, not just pay your fines or serve your probation out or whatever else it was. You had to prepare all these documents and then go to this thing in Tallahassee, sit in front of a committee that would then decide whether or not, based on what you gave them, you have satisfied your debt to society and when could approve or deny it. And if you miss it, you're denied and you can't get it again. Like, this was a problem, a huge problem. And of course, most of the people who are disenfranchised are not white people. So it's certainly targeted to certain types of demographics. And so we voted to change that. And yet still the same system, more or less, is still in place. And there is no other state in the United States that disenfranchises as many people as we do in the ways that we do. I'm sorry, I say so we. I'm not in Florida anymore. But yeah, obviously I spent a long time there and I was very involved in politics there. But it is one of the reasons. I mean, 1.5 million, I think, people can't vote in the state of Florida. And if all of those people were restored their rights after they finish their sentences, even without the fines and fees, which sometimes are ridiculous, I had to pay $20,000 to the state of Florida to have them dismiss a case. And the money that they said I needed to pay them was for the time and resources they spent raiding my house without a warrant.
Wow.
For a dismissal, which is, I don't know how that's not like extortion.
They should give you $20,000.
Well, we're still suing them for the other stuff, so maybe they will. But yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is insane. Like, if I didn't have it or I couldn't raise it, then they would have lost the trial, but whatever. That kind of stuff's crazy, but most of the ones that they charge people with are not very serious and shouldn't be a question because we already voted and said, yes, give it back, give them their rights back. I think there was a few types of crimes that were exempted from that. Like I think sex crimes and murder were not automatically like restored in that poll. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was.
Wow.
But yeah, if all of a sudden all those people could vote again, the state would never be red again.
I'm going on trial Monday for 3 felonies.
Oh no.
What state are you in?
Or Oregon.
Oh God.
For
I
drawing
don't know
with
what those
chalk.
are.
For drawing with chalk. It's good. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
When I tell you that there are ridiculous felonies, that's exactly what I mean.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I wrote kidnapping is wrong in chalk. And
Oh
it
my
got me like a
goodness.
ton of charges. And then I started complaining about that and I got a ton of other charges.
They stack. They stack
What-
to make you shut up.
Do you know how can the Democrats manipulate Florida? Like I know some rich people that have more than one home fly back to Florida just to vote. I wonder if Democrats started doing that in states that have low populations like Wyoming or places like that. Because if you
that type of operation, they would, first of all, the first thing they would do is pass a law that says you have to be, I mean, there technically is already a law that majority resident, and they would start hunting people down who they think are violating it.
Yeah.
Florida, for now, is a lost cause. I think sinking money into Florida is a mistake. There might be a handful of congressional races there that are close that we could win, but in general, it's a mistake. The Mississippi governor's race was only like 2 or 3 point difference between the Democrat and the Republican. DeSantis, when he ran in 2022, was 20 points. If Democrats were serious about picking up what we've lost, they'd go to Mississippi because people almost elected a Democratic governor there by a very slim margin. The same with Louisiana. The guy won the majority by 1.6%, I think. And Louisiana traditionally has been a purple state. They only had Democratic senators until after Katrina, and only Democratic governors for forever until Bobby Jindal. And then they reelected John Bell Edwards after his first term. So we had a Democratic governor for 2 terms while I was there. And so it's a winnable state. Louisiana and Mississippi are more winnable than Florida. And you try to convince somebody like in the DNC infrastructure, I won't name names so I don't piss anybody off, but that's where they should prioritize, and they won't listen.
Huey Long won
Huey
an
Long?
election in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Arguably,
Louisiana. Okay, well, first of all,
Louisiana
Louisiana has a record of corruption that could rival Chicago's.
Oh, but he was a liberal. Like, I
yeah.
mean, he was,
we've had some bad people.
like, I
governor of
remember there was
Louisiana.
like one election in Louisiana, maybe like 20 years. I was born in Louisiana. I was born in Delhi.
Okay.
And I lived like the first 7 years of my life in Shreveport. But the first there was a governor race there like 20 years ago that was between a KKK guy and a felon.
Yeah.
And like those were the two. Like, I mean, it's like, what do you call an honest Louisiana politician?
Yeah. I know which one you're talking about too. Yeah, it's they have a history, but John Bell Edwards was good people. And as much as I did not like Bobby Jindal's policy, he was not stupid. He was a very intelligent person. Mm-hmm. He systematically dismantled a lot of public services, but that was because of his politics, not because he was dumb. And I mean, I don't really know much about this new guy that they just elected, but I see very horrible things happening in Louisiana now, which is not good. But
the last guy was a Democrat, right?
Yeah, John Bell Edwards. He was elected. He served 2 terms, so he was reelected after the first time, and he was okay. I mean,
by Louisiana, by comparison to the, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Democrat. He was in line with most things Democrat. I remember his position on abortion wasn't great, but it also did not result in any changes to the laws itself, so it didn't really matter.
I remember he did some. There was in Bossier City, there was a lot of police violence against blacks, and he did some things that were positive in that regard. But I don't remember.
You don't want to talk about cops in Louisiana. Louisiana has the 3rd highest per capita prison population compared across every country in the world.
What do you think Delhi is? Where I was literally born in a prison town. Like Delhi was famous for its prison. Yeah.
Really, the cops in the prison system are probably the biggest industry in the state next to filming now, which was a post-Katrina way of trying to make money. That worked. I was actually in as an extra in 2 movies that were shooting while I was in grad school down there.
That's
yeah, because I did my master's at LSU.
LSU, Baton Rouge.
Yep. So they shot
my wife
while I was there, and so I was an extra in that. And the first Jurassic World in that series remake was shot down where Jazzland used to be, and I guess people call it Six Flags. It was Jazzland first. It's Jazzland always. It's nothing now, but they shot that there, and I got to do some extra work in some of that. It was fun. It was easy, like $200 a day. So
not bad. And that was like not just a couple of years ago either.
It was like between 2012 and 15 or 16 was when I was there. So they were all filmed in kind of that period of time. But yeah.
So thanks for coming on the show. I'll email you about, or what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, email me. I don't check social media messages very much because I have too many platforms to keep up with that. So emailing me or texting me is the best. Okay,
I'll send you an email and set up a time. I really, really, really have been wanting to have like a objective conversation against some of the stupid talking points I hear about climate change and how it's not man-made, and it's just like, oh well, we've always had climate change, like those kinds of things.
That's why Frank Luntz wants you to call it climate change and not global warming. You should really Google it. It's probably one of his most successful conversation turning points.
That is really so climate change was actually
Frank Luntz's idea.
And Frank Luntz is a conservative.
Yes, he is.
So it's
I think he's come around now.
Like it nerfed the idea of global warming.
Yes, because global warming is scary. The planet heating up is scary. But if it's climate change, that means it changes all the time, and that it's totally, which is true. The climate has changed in the 4 some billion years that this planet has existed, and it makes it easy to dismiss and poke holes in things. Apparently now, though, because when I Googled, I was going to send a link to an article on my phone. He came out with some piece a few years ago where he said, "No, we actually do need to do something about climate change, and maybe my bad for making the whole world, or at least this part of the world, disarmed about it." So.
That's really fascinating. I'm not. If you have an article, send it to me.
I'll send it to you.
That is fascinating to me, because I've always thought, climate change. Like I always figured climate change was like, because it gets also like that explains why all of a sudden we have like freezing temperatures in Texas.
Well, global warming explains that. So but that is somewhat confusing. Not to say that we haven't embraced it, because clearly we have. But it was global warming for decades.
Yeah, that's what I grew up calling it.
Yep.
So, okay. Thanks for coming on, Rebecca. I will talk to you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.